Hello, hello. Welcome to today's episode of the Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today, we are thrilled to have Nick Wejbe with us. Nick is the sole owner of Apollo Solar, a solar energy company based in San Clemente, Orange County, California. And he's actually born and raised California, who got his start in the solar industry thanks to his grandfather, who recommended that he explore the field. With his entrepreneurial spirit and a passion for sustainability, Nick had successfully grown his business in just a few short years. And now, at the tender age of 36, he's been married for almost a couple of years, which is an interesting thing to say. And Nick, in today's episode, will teach us a little more about his journey into the solar energy industry, his experience as a solar entrepreneur, not a solopreneur, but maybe is a solopreneur, and his insights on the future of solar energy. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wiseman.
Okay, so what inspired you? I think I want to know what inspired you to get into the solar energy industry, and what made you motivated, and how did you find your entrepreneurial spirit?
Great question. So, as I mentioned, my grandpa kind of tipped me off on the industry, and so he kind of inspired me. The entrepreneurship came after getting into solar. I didn't have any sales background before that. But when you kind of get into sales, you start learning skill sets that may transition your mind and your way of thinking, and bring forth that entrepreneurship. So I got into the industry in 2018. I started off with a very large company called Vivint Solar, who's actually now just been acquired from Sunrun. But so I started there. I got some really good training. They run a large operation. Figured that wasn't a good fit for me for a couple different reasons. So I went to a different solar company called SunGrade Solar, and started my journey there essentially. And I've been to a few different companies. I've got to see how other companies operate. There's a lot of things to take into consideration in operations, and also compensation structures. So, I got to see different sides of different companies, how they operate, and just kind of learn the industry in and out. So, we're in 2023 now. That was 2018. So, over 5 years of experience. Just recently, within the last 5 months, started my own solar company. It's called Apollo Solar, based out of Orange County here, and we operate all throughout the state of California, and in other multiple states as well. We're operational in about 14 states at the current moment. And so yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a saving grace for me, honestly. I was born and raised a musician, born and raised here in San Clemente, California. Most of my education was in music. So I'd gone to school for audio engineering. My dad was a music producer in Hollywood growing up, and owned a recording studio. So yeah, it's a lot of fun there. And that's still, a big passion of mine. But as I was getting older, you learn you got to start to make money and provide, and you get into serious relationships, and you just got to make ends meet. But getting into the solar industry was a blessing for me because, we found, you can make really good money doing solar, even as a rep. And, it was a product that I can finally get behind as far as something to sell, because you don't feel like you're ripping someone off. You're doing good for the client that you're selling to. You're helping yourself out, and you're helping the environment. So it's the ultimate three, we call it, where it's a win-win-win for everyone in the situation. So bigger picture is, it's a sustainable energy that we can harvest straight from the sun rather than using fossil fuels. And an older all the older traditional ways of getting power for the earth. So we have a long way to go, but it's much better for the planet. So it's something you can really get behind and, feel good behind selling a product like that. And also, helping the planet earth transition over to a different source of energy.
So you've put out a lot of stuff there that we can unpack here. So I was that's a lot. That's a lot for
Yeah.
sure. So what do you think were maybe some of your biggest challenges that you faced as you got into this industry?
Great question. So very challenging. Anyone with a sales background, or maybe they don't even have a sales background, but I remember one day I was studying to take my tests for mortgages. I was going to do mortgages and have my real estate license as well.
Mhm.
And I had seen some successful people just on YouTube talking about how they grew a business and they started off with door to door. And I personally thought, I said, wow, that's hard. I don't think I can ever do that or even want to. And I applied for a solar job, not knowing it was a door to door position, but it was a salary position plus
Mhm.
commission. And I found myself there day one, and they say, yeah, we're going door to door. I'm like, oh, geez, here we go. But I already left my other job and I had no other option. And, I just wanted a change in my life. So I figured, hey, why not give it a go? And so I got into door to door, and that was definitely a challenge. You really, you have to skill up as an individual. There's a lot to learn. Everything from people skills to just educating yourself so you sound like a professional. When you're going to someone's door and knocking it to try and sell a product, it is not the easiest thing to do. I mean, real people in real estate do it, but not a lot of them do. And I feel like if more did and weren't, I wouldn't say lazy, but just, I mean, it's hard to do. No one wants to do it, but you can generate business that way. And I was actually very successful doing so, more successful by like 4 or 5 times than I'd ever been in any other area of
Mhm.
my life, as far as making money. But I did find I had a talent for it as well, which was good. I always had kind of people skills. And people had always told me I'd do good in sales, but I never knew what that meant. I was just like, oh, okay, thanks for the compliment. I don't know how I would do good in sales. I don't even know how to sell or where to start or how you generate, leads, we would call them, and close deals. And I remember looking at ads for positions for other sales products as well. And some of the requirements were, going in home or going B2B and, presenting a presentation for people. And I was like, I don't know if I ever I could go in someone's house and like present a presentation and do all this stuff. So it was a lot. It was overwhelming, but I've learned a lot since I got into it. And, you have to adapt and just level up. It took a lot of skills and a lot of studying and a lot of hard work. But so since I got into solar, I've been completely different, as far as work ethic, and never thought I'd become a workaholic, one would say. But when you join solar, you're an independent contractor in most scenarios, and you get what you put into it. And so like at this point, it's just like work never stops for me. It's growing my business. You're always growing a business. And so, we would go to work all day and you come home and you study, you do follow up. You wake up in the morning, you're studying on the way to work, you go to work all day, 8, 10, even 12-hour days. You come home and you're studying, and it's been an overall grind, but it's definitely paid off for me. So I'm extremely grateful that solar just came into my life and I pursued it and never gave up along the way. There's a lot of people that will give up, and the job's not for everyone starting off, given there's different avenues to, making it in the solar industry, one would say. But door to door is the main one to kind of get your foot in, because you got to just become really sharp at the product before any other company would let you in, as like a closer, we would call it, to start taking appointments and closing them and giving presentations. But there's other avenues, but it all starts most likely with door to door, which keeps a lot of people from doing it. But the people that pursue it end up doing really well. And I know a lot of young entrepreneurs as well. I'm talking like in their early 20s, 21, 22, 25. below 30 years old that are extremely wealthy already, and have millions of dollars just from getting into the solar industry, and they're super young. And funny enough, you find that, the younger crowd can do really well in this industry because like a lot of college kids will come out of college and maybe they don't do what they studied for, or they'll drop out of college, but they'll fall into the solar industry, and they have that motivation, that drive. Maybe they did sports and they have a competitive, they're very competitive at heart. And those guys end up doing really well as solar entrepreneurs, and
Mm-hmm.
become, owning solar companies, or dealers, as we would call them as well. And they make a lot of money doing it. And, and that's just a start to, financial freedom. You'll find, there's a lot of events that go on in the industry as well. And they're teaching you where to invest your money after you make it with solar. So it's just overall, I found a really, really good vehicle to get you to be to financial freedom. Solar has been an amazing vehicle for me to one, become an entrepreneur, and two, start saving money, and then just kind of start learning where to invest it as well. So it's been an absolute blessing for me thus far.
That's pretty cool. Again, more stuff to unpack. I wanted to kind of, circle back a little bit to when you get started. Clearly, you must have had some good mentorship to be able to walk up to those doors and learn how to knock on the door, and not have somebody close it in your face. Although I'm sure that happened a few times.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I could say I've had the best mentorship, and I can also say maybe not enough. And funny enough, I've been to different companies. Some provide a decent amount of training. A lot of it you're reading it, but there's other companies, and I've seen a lot of people kind of just get thrown out into the wolves. And it's crazy, but it's kind of also a faster way to adapt, because you can have training on the doors, and honestly, I had some training, but I didn't have a lot, I would say. So you kind of go out and you
Oh,
shadow someone for just a couple days, and then all of a sudden you're on your own. You're on your own, and after that first couple of days of you being on your own, and you'll get the door slammed in your face, you realize, hey, I got to adapt, I got to study, I got to skill up. And it kind of puts you into a position where it's sink or swim, and you got to learn the game and learn your product quick and learn your pitch. So I've seen companies literally just, you show up to work, they give you a script and a voice memo, and you're supposed to memorize it before work day one. And so you're reading a script, you're listening to a voice memo, they're kind of telling you how it's supposed to go, and that's all you got. And I've seen people make it out of there and just become monsters and become super sharp, super quick, super fast. But in all honesty, I mean, I had some training at my first two companies, but it wasn't very in depth at all. And even when it came to giving presentations, I remember it being very it was very primal, in a sense that my first jobs, when they were teaching us to present, we just had a pen and paper, and we're kind of just going over solar. Where now we have a presentation tool. I usually go in with a computer or an iPad, and I can show them a design and savings. But
mm-hmm.
starting off, in all honesty, and I was still doing well starting off, but I didn't have many tools or much training getting into it, and still managed to become very successful with it.
That's fascinating. I was thinking as you were talking, so clearly you could probably, if you just loved sales, you could just do that, right? And you probably could have done pretty well selling somehow. But there was some spark in there that said, why am I doing this for other people? How can I do this in a better way? And I'm curious how you got that entrepreneurial spark that made you set out on your own.
Well, honestly, money does come into play with it. So like year after year, my goal was to just make more money than the previous year.
Good
So
goal.
that was a big spark, right? And getting married and being in a serious relationship before I did get married. My wife's a nurse, by the way, and she was, she had her roadmap to success. She knew what she wanted to do. For me, it was always music, but it wasn't really the right place and the right time. And I still do that. It's still a passion. I work with a lot of artists on my spare time, which isn't as much as it used to be. But now my goal is, make more money year after year. And then also, now that I own my own business, I'm growing it to a spot and kind of automating it, filming a lot of training content and just automating it in places to where maybe I have a little bit more time to pursue. But nowadays it's like I'm working 10 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe if I have an hour or two at the end of the night, I could, go on my computer and start doing music or book a session for someone to come over, because I have a small home recording studio that's, actually nicer than a lot of studios now that I've kind of have money to put back into the recording studio, which was a spark for me as well. I figure, hey, if I can make more money here, I can put that into my passion. I can buy what I've
Mm-hmm.
always wanted. I can have all the top-notch equipment. And it makes my recording process much more smoother and seamless because I got really good equipment and it's all operating at full capacity and everything sounds good. So, that's always been, I would call it my North Star, was music, right? And so that's always been a passion that I'll continue to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
I play guitar, bass, drums, a little keyboard. I went to school for audio engineering, so I'm a producer. I sing, I songwrite, I do it all in regards to music. But solar just came upon my life, and it's something I'd be stupid to walk away from. And it's been really rewarding, and I can provide for me and my family. So it's just great overall. And so, yeah, the money honestly sparked it. And then you kind of reach a level where you start recruiting people and you see that you're changing people's lives and you're changing their income that they're making. So that had been the next step in my career once I started bringing people on and realizing, hey, I'm making relationships and connections, and people are extremely grateful for the opportunity I've given them. And, I've flown people out from other states or given them money to drive out for the opportunity and put them up for a couple months and train them hands-on
Oh,
personally, and have seen them, be very successful, making tens of thousands of dollars a month when they came from nothing. And they came from, a small town and a small mindset that nothing like this was even possible, and they didn't even know if they can believe in the opportunity, but they had faith in me, just like talking and as I was interviewing them, which I give them props for. And I've absolutely changed a lot of lives, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So that was kind of the next spark in me. And then moving forward, you kind of get the spark and you realize like the big picture, what we're doing for the planet. So there's different levels to this thing that kind of just keep you going and keep you motivated to keep pushing on. And I think that was a big hack and a big trick for me staying in the industry, was bringing on recruits, because now it's like you're not just giving up on yourself. If you were to give up, you'd be giving up on other people as well. So, and it keeps you out there, it keeps you motivated to even stay on the doors, because I hit a point where I was like, I don't want to do this or knock anymore. I just kind of want to, take Zoom appointments and close appointments there, which is totally a thing, but that's a whole nother, side of the industry to learn, lead generation or purchasing leads. And there's a lot of bad leads out there you can purchase, but
mm-hmm.
it was the next step for keeping me on the doors and keeping growing my business. And you get to a spot where, you're doing really, really well and everything's worked out. And I just couldn't be more grateful to have stuck it out in the solar industry to be where I'm at today.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, I have a bunch of questions that I came up with here thanks to Chat GPT.
All right. Awesome.
Gotta be up there. But
Yeah.
so there are some things that I'd like to look at for you. One of the things, and this is clearly off my script, but I noticed that you really lit up when you talked about discovering how great it is to help other people.
Yeah.
And that's pretty amazing. It said you can get everything in the world that you want if you help others to get what they want. So
Yeah.
that was Zig Ziglar's famous quote.
That's a great quote. And yeah, it's, and so that's why I have solar to thank for changing me even as a person and everything else. Cause it's like now I have different goals. It's very rewarding to help people. I had never felt that before. I mean, I've always been a positive, optimistic guy and like to help people. I do what I can to help people, but you're limited to a point, and to help people financially and so that they can change their lives, their families' lives, give back, and
Hmm.
then also open up that spark in my brain where it's like I actually want to make money to give back to people in need, people that don't have a lot, people that are in poverty. I look forward to doing events where just like going and helping people in other countries as well, which just kind of sparked out of nowhere after, hanging out with the right crowd, other people in solar as well that have already are kind of at the top, and see how they give back and see how rewarding that is. And I've realized that's such a cool thing to do. And you can't be in a position like that unless you have something to give back, whether it's money or you can dedicate your time to doing that as well and going to these specific events to give back to people in need. But I've been able to do that, and it's just because it breaks my heart, because I've been there. I've been in the 9 to 5 and capped on income, and and I see people working the same amount of hours every single day, and they work probably just as hard, or maybe just as hard as I do. And if it's not, they're still working hard, and they put in the amount of hours overtime, and they absolutely deserve the world, and they deserve so much more than the money that they get out of the job that they're at. And so if I can give back in any way after I make my money, that's one thing that rewards me inside, like beyond anything else that I've ever thought of or I could ever think of. So that's a blessing as well too. So and that's just another point for me to hit. If I can make money to give it back, that is something that will make me happy inside as a person, where you can't find really anywhere else.
Oh, that's so absolutely true. And so many people figure, well, I'll give, when I have X. But really, it's never too early to start giving and helping in any way. And as you said, it could be money, but it could be time. But I like to say it's important to trade the tyranny of or for the beauty and creativity of and. So being able to give money and of yourself is really, it's really terrific. So are there any specific things that catch your attention or your emotion that you feel really connected to that you want to help with?
That's great. Typically, I've been going to events like with inside the solar industry, just in regards to the earth and making the earth a more sustainable place. But there's different sectors I would like to get involved with as well. My first one with my first company, I know we're going to do a beach cleanup. I live here in San Clemente, and the beaches get dirty, so that's going to be like my first sort of event I can do to just kind of give back to the community and make the earth a cleaner place and just
Hmm.
keep town a lot cleaner. But there's different levels to that too. But poverty for me is, I would say, is a big one, just because it breaks my heart to see that out there in the world. So I look forward to finding ways to give back to just people in need and that don't have the financial needs. I think would be a big one, because as you start to make money, that's when you kind of feel bad for other people's situations, because everyone's working 8 hours in the world, essentially, but we're
Hmm.
all getting paid different amounts. So and and sometimes it's just due to disposition in life. And so that'd be one thing I would want to give back to.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Really, I admire you for that, and you have my support.
Oh, appreciate it, thank you very much.
So, other questions I have, I know that being able to give back and help the environment seems to have struck a chord with you.
Mhm.
Um, I'm imagining it's a major chord,
Yeah.
maybe a sus5 or something like that. But how do you see solar energy impacting the environment and society in the coming years? And what role do you think solar energy will play in the transition to a more sustainable future?
Great question. So essentially just kind of getting away from fossil fuels. I mean, it's extremely horrible to the earth the way we generate the power that we currently use, and it's extremely outdated. And it's not clean power at all. So, you know, even Leonardo DiCaprio, he's an environmentalist, right? I just use that name because a lot of people know him. But, with global warming, everything else that happens on planet Earth, a lot of it could be due to the way that we're currently getting our energy. The sun being, you know, an energy source that comes up every day, and we've learned how to harness it. And it's a no-brainer as far as it being a cleaner power source compared to fossil fuels. So that's a start for us. Obviously, there's other ways to generate power as well, that are also cleaner than fossil fuels. But I think overall, the utility companies, we like to look at it as one of the last standing monopolies here in the States, and they continue to raise their rates every year, and we're always paying to update, the outdated grid. And charges, at least where I live in California, is so high, substantially high, that, believe it or not, especially in California, other states it could be a wash, but it's still better for the planet and still better for the people. But it's actually cheaper to go solar than to stick with using the utility company that's using fossil fuels to generate the energy
Mm.
and charging you an arm and a leg to transfer it to your property, through all the lines and the grid system. So it's just outdated. It's not a sustainable way to continue to generate power. It's not doing any good for the earth. It's absolutely horrific and horrible long term. So we got to start, thinking into the future, for different ways to generate power. And I think a big one right now, we have a long way to go, but a big one would be, using solar energy and harvesting the sun's energy, right on top of your roof, rather than transferring everything through the grid system. So it's just much cleaner overall. Other countries are going to adopt it more as well, and already have. But yeah, we're just currently living in an outdated system, and there's a lot of politics tied to it,
Mm-hmm.
as you can imagine. One of my favorite quotes is Warren Buffett. He said one of the largest distributions, or transfers of wealth, is going to come down to the change of energy source. It was something like that. Like, one of the largest transfers of wealth will be, transferring energy sources, essentially,
Mm.
away from fossil fuels into different energy sources. So yeah, it's a big picture thing, and it's much better for the planet. And it's definitely the future. It's the future. We're living outdated. The grid system, is 130 years old. And it's just being controlled by a monopoly, and they just keep inflating prices every year to keep updating an outdated grid and way of getting power. So a lot of things have to change. We have a long ways to go, but it's a great industry to get into. It's kind of why my grandpa tipped me off into it, because it's a growing industry. It's a good one to be in, and we have a long ways to go. So yeah, I'm looking forward to growing in the industry, and it's not going anywhere by any means. So that's why I'm here to stay, and I'm glad I got into this sort of industry overall.
That's pretty cool. So I'm wondering, you talk to a lot of people, and clearly you have a more sense of what the ordinary person is thinking about solar. What are some of the common misconceptions that you come across about solar energy, and how do you address those?
Great question. So there's, the misconceptions, I would say, is from the past and then also currently, but there's been a lot of misconceptions. It's like a lot of people say, hey, especially in California, right? Like, hey, solar's free, this, that, and the other, because you'll see a lot of ads online where they're saying, hey, it's free solar, free this, the government's going to pay for you to go solar. There's also leasing products out there on the market, which is completely different from an ownership product, but they kind of sound similar as far as like pitching it to a homeowner. So those are the main misconceptions, because solar, by any means, it's not free. It's just a lot cheaper than sticking with the utility company. And when they say it's free, it's funny because there's programs out there where you don't have to come out of pocket a single penny. So you don't have to come out of pocket to make the switch.
Mm-hmm.
And the typical pitch that we do here for solar is, a lot of times we're financing solar systems. It's just a zero down financing product. And so you can go solar. You don't have to come out of pocket one single dollar right? We're partnering with financiers that if you qualify, will cover the upfront costs for your property to go solar. We'll actually put the panels up there. And then now you're going to be generating all of your power from solar. And at that point, since you're getting all your power from solar, you stop paying the utility company because you're not getting your energy from them anymore. And so say your average utility bill is like, $400 a month or something like that, then your average solar payment to finance, so your financing payment would be closer to like 200, give or take, right? So
Mm-hmm.
savings from day one, about 50% or more without having to come out of pocket. But that doesn't mean solar is free. It's not free. You're still paying off the system over time, but it makes a lot of sense, even financially, even with the environment inside and everything just being a cleaner source to get your power from. Of course it's better for the planet. That's a no-brainer. But also financially, it makes a lot of sense for people to go solar in California. That's why it's such an easy product to sell, because you're saving people 50% on their energy bill. It's a bill that they're already paying, and they can just stop renting power from the utility company, right? Every month you're just leasing power from them. Every year they inflate their rates substantially. It's about 15% here. This year it's even a higher rate increase in San Diego Gas and Electric. And and so you can just lock in your payment because your financing payment doesn't go up every single year. So you lock it in. It's kind of like if you could, analogy a lot of us use in solar is like if you could have locked in your gasoline prices 10, 15 years ago and still be paying that rate. Is that something you would consider or want to do, right?
Mm.
And that's just financially, right? So it's just cheaper to go solar, and the government, they pay essentially for 30%. You can look at it that way because they give you a federal tax credit. It's a renewable energy credit. When you go to your CPA, you fill out a 5695 residential energy credit form. There's
Mm-hmm.
tons of incentives for commercial, which I do as well. But yeah, even for residential, for a homeowner to make the switch over to solar power, it's not free, like I said, but essentially it is zero down, and you can just lock in your rate and pay a much cheaper bill than what you're currently paying. And then year after year, see even more savings as utility rates are rising their rates and you're staying fixed at one rate. So those are the benefits, and that's why it helps out people. And so there's a misconceptions with the leasing product because there's often an escalator on that one. So it's like, yeah, your utility bill could go up on a leasing product. Me personally, being in the space for 5 years, I only sell ownership because I believe in that product a lot more than the leasing product. So I steer people away from the leasing product. If you don't have the money cash to do it, you can finance a solar system and still pay much cheaper than what you're currently paying today to the utility company. But that's probably the biggest misconception, because there's a lot of ads online saying, hey, solar's free, click here, and then people, oh, it's not free. Everyone wants something for free, but it's not free, but it's still a great product to, invest into. And the other thing is too, rather than paying the utility company to lease power from them, you never see that money back. At least you're putting it back into your home. You're paying off an asset that's increasing your property value. After the system's paid off, you don't have an energy bill anymore. Essentially, you're always going to have what's called a grid interconnection fee, which is typically between $10 and $15 a month to stay connected to the utility company's grid.
Mm-hmm.
But that's minor. But essentially, after your solar financing, after the system's paid off, you have free power just coming from your solar panels until they stop producing. These generations of nowadays are going for 30 to 40 years still. So, it's a very wise financial investment. It's especially if you take into consideration compounding interest over time and compounding inflation with rates inflating year over year. So if you look at it that way, which is the smart way to look at it, because rates are going to continue to go up. If there's one thing that we know in the solar industry and in life, is that the utility companies are never going to stop or never going to start charging you less for electric. They're always going to inflate their rates to, keep being able to upgrade the grid and keep it updated, and, transmission and distribution to get the power to your property. Because in California, they're typically shipping most of the power from out of state. So, if you were to look at your charges on your electric bill, it's mostly distribution and transmission.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 50% of your bill. So they're really sticking it to people and people that can see the bigger picture. And when you look at a solar proposal, savings a lot of times, if you take into consideration the compounding inflation over 25 years, it's over $100,000, like in most proposals. And for people that use a lot of power, it's, you know, it could be more than a couple $100,000. So
Wow.
savings is really there, and it's a very wise financial decision if, you know, your solar expert does a good job in explaining to you the savings over time like that. Then and you can really see the big picture of locking in your rate, and staying away from the inflating rates, and you know, putting your money into an asset on your property. And it's the same reason why people stop renting. They want to own, right? They want to own, they want their money, instead of renting their home every month, to go into something that they're paying off that they're going to own. So same analogy there with solar. You can own your power rather than rent it. So not only is it better financially for homeowners, it's much more better, and it's better for the earth as well. So it's just kind of a win-win-win all around. Obviously, we make money selling solar systems and doing installs as well. It's a big construction project, and guys got to get paid, just like in any industry. But at the end of the day, it's a win-win-win for everyone. And, you know, so that's why it's very rewarding just being in this industry and being able to make money here doing it, being able to help people save money. And the big picture is saving the earth. But a lot of people don't get to that bigger picture until you've been in the industry for a year or two, and you really start seeing the impact, and you start going to events that are solar related and related to the earth and renewable energy. And then it kind of gives you that extra spark, and like sparks up inside that you kind of realize what you're doing for the planet is you're really helping. So now, you know, essentially we're on a mission now. Now it's a full-blown mission that we're out here.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, and when you have that conviction and that belief deep inside, it makes selling a lot easier in the product, because it really is a no-brainer, and everyone needs to know about it. Everyone should be transitioning, and eventually everyone's going to have to, especially in California. The state's been mandated to go 100% renewable by 2045, which is down the line. They're trying to hit 50% by 2035. And with, you know, electric vehicles being the next big thing in California, right? They're trying to transition people away from gas cars. When people own, and I own an electric vehicle as well, but when you're charging an electric vehicle at your property, you know, your electric rates are going to go up as well, but at least you're not paying a gasoline bill. So you're saving money by not paying a gasoline bill, but then your electricity goes up. Once again, you're saving more just by on your electric bill than if you were to just be sticking with the gasoline bill. But then the only way to cut down that electric bill that just shot up because of your EV is by going solar as well. So that's kind of like the way you really win as far as savings, by going electric here in California.
That's fascinating. So I have a quick question for you before we wrap up. And, you know, California is about to change some. There's a change coming on April 15th. We want to talk about that. And does it seem to you that the power companies are trying to throw some roadblocks in the way of the advancement of solar, or making it difficult? And after that, is it going to make as much sense for people in California to go solar?
Great question. I'm so glad you asked that. Yeah. So Gavin Newsom passed a law on December 14th. It's getting implemented on April 14th, and he is changing solar laws for good in perpetuity. Currently, we've been on what's called net energy metering 2.0. And what net energy metering is, it's the crediting system for how the utility company actually credits you for the power that your solar system is producing into their grid. So during the current laws of net energy metering 2.0, what they do is anything your solar system produces, it goes into their grid, and they store all of your kilowatt hours for you essentially. And kilowatt hours is the metric that in which they measure electricity. So your system is generating kilowatt hours into their grid, and traditionally during net energy metering 2.0, they give back all your kilowatt hours throughout your 12-month cycle, so that they're actually storing your energy for you and acting as a battery essentially. The only thing that a battery could do for you during net energy metering 2.0 is get you through a blackout, because currently when they shut down the grid, your solar system goes down too. There's also electric generators you can buy too to kind of get you through blackouts, because batteries are pretty overpriced right now. A lot of
Mhm.
technology is going into batteries so that they can become cheaper, much more efficient, and also smaller in size. But so right now, the current law change going into in California, right? Newsom appointed a new commissioner for the public utilities company, and they started petitioning for this law. I had followed it for the last year and a half or so in depth, and that finally got passed on December 14th, and it's going to be implemented. So right now, we're super slammed. There's a big rush. Everyone's trying to get grandfathered into the current law structure of net energy metering 2.0 because there are extra benefits to it. The current law states for net energy metering 3.0, they're changing the crediting system. And so now anything that you put into the grid, so your solar system, right? It's harvesting the sun's energy. Any power then goes directly to your home and is going to power all your appliances, all your lights, your fridges, your air conditioning, anything that's currently being used. And then any excess will hit their grid. And now instead of them giving you back all of your kilowatt hours at a 1-for-1 ratio and acting as a battery for you, they're changing it. They don't want to act as a battery for you anymore because anything that hits their grid, they want to keep 75% of the kilowatt hours that you put into their grid for them to store it for you and only give you 25% of the kilowatt hours back that your solar system produced for their grid. So the way around that is now people are going to have to purchase batteries, right? And so the downside of that, now you have to purchase a battery because the last thing you want is your energy that your system produce is to hit their grid because they're getting so greedy. They want to keep 75% of the power that you produce. So if you have a battery, it completely fixes the problem. But the issue is batteries are pretty expensive right now. So there's going to be a huge battery. Well, one, there's a huge battery bill coming out, which is very good. And here's the tricky thing, right? And here's what you got to realize is as they start to whenever they de-incentivize solar in California, the state has that mandate still that they have to hit, right? By 2035, 50% of the grid has to be renewables, and 2045, 100%. So they're going to go back and forth with each other. So as the utility companies de-incentivize it, they're going to have to come out with extra incentives to still incentivize people to go solar. So there's a $990 million bill getting ready to get released for battery incentives. Because what that would do to a battery, a proposal, a solar proposal, and let's take financing, as an example. So now instead of seeing like 50 to 70% savings, you're going to have to, package a battery with your system. Where traditionally I would never package batteries because I knew that the grid was literally acting as a battery for them. And a lot of solar reps would push them on people, but to make extra money, which is horrible. But I was never recommending them unless they needed medical equipment running 24/7 or had any family members with medical issues and they absolutely needed that running. But where we live, I don't see enough blackouts to justify purchasing over $10,000 for a battery when the grid just acts as a battery for you. So now it's going to change your savings margin in California, but they're still going to see about 30 to 40% savings, even when you add a battery to the system. So instead of having that $400 payment, now maybe your payment's going to be, $280 or something like that. So you're still saving money, which is still good in the long scheme of things because there's other markets in the United States, like Florida, tons of other markets where it's almost a wash. Like there's a lot of people that aren't seeing as much or any savings at all when they transition to solar. And what solar reps have to learn to do is just not sell as much on savings in California anymore. They're going to be selling more on energy independence and owning your own power and, having your own grid, your own home act as a grid system for yourself. And which is the long-term thing. And everyone really wants energy independence because when it comes down to it, if we were to ever, go to a war or something, the biggest what they could do is shut off our grid system because there's three central grid systems. We have the West Coast, the East Coast, and we have a central one in Texas, which I believe as well. And as soon as your grid systems go down, we are not guarded. So it'd be very wise if you have your own protection there and your own grid system at your home and you can keep your power on with batteries. That's extremely valuable in my opinion. So people in general want batteries, except Now it's going to just make it a little bit more costly. So that's why it's wise to do it now. If you can have the grid act as a battery for you for free, and you can, maximize your savings, that's why we're having people go solar now. You'll still see plenty of savings in California if you do it during net energy metering 3.0. And here's the thing, you're always going to grow back your savings margin because one, after that battery incentive bill comes out, if you qualify for it, you're going to get batteries at a discounted rate, and you can actually get a solar system with a battery package cheaper than if you were to have done it last year or 2 or 3 years ago. So you can have that whole package for actually cheaper if you get that battery incentive than if you were to do it. So there's a pro in my opinion. So that's going to be great. And then also, there's a huge, like in San Diego Gas and Electric, they approved a rate increase in January, where this summer is going to be the largest rate increase we've ever seen. Peak hour last year was at about 50, on average, 50 cents a kilowatt hour. This year, this summer, peak hour is going to be between 81 and 83 cents a kilowatt hour. So,
Wow.
which is crazy. We're literally approaching the dollar mark because people use over 1,000 kilowatt hours like on the air conditioning months. So at 83 cents, like they're going to be seeing bills well over $500, $900, $1,000 for 1 month. So
Crazy.
as the utility companies continue to raise their rates year after year, the savings margin just starts growing back to where it already was in California during net energy metering 2.0, which is typically between 50 and 70% if you're getting a fair price from whoever's providing you a solar proposal. So, there's pros and cons in my opinion. The pro is going to be batteries are going to get much cheaper because now, as people are going to need batteries, the battery manufacturers have been charging an arm and a leg compared to what it actually takes to actually manufacture them. So it's going to get competitive in a state where battery costs are going to come down, and there's going to be bills to incentivize going and purchasing batteries. So now you can get the full kit and caboodle, right, for solar and a battery for cheaper than if you were to have had to in the past. And you can actually have full energy independence and freedom there. And then, we'll be gaining back a savings margin here in California right away this summer with that rate increase. So I've seen a lot of people, it's like, what's going to happen to solar in California, but they don't understand the bigger picture, just kind of like a mediocre rep that doesn't do the homework into looking into, or just the average person on the street that doesn't, know much about solar, or just like a regular homeowner, they don't know, the ins and outs, or they can't see the bigger picture. Like I'm always studying. They may get scared of the law that's changing, but in reality, it was something that needed to happen for the industry as well. The grid can't keep taking back all this energy that we're producing into the system as well. So they're
Really?
trying to take a little stress off the grid because they keep having to update it and maintain it. And with that being said, now that they're making it a little bit more expensive to go solar in California for the time being, because you have to purchase the battery, which will be offset with battery incentives and rates increasing. But with that being said, the utility company is raising their rates. And then, so, it's just going to go back and forth. Like I said, as it gets de-incentivizing it, the state's going to have to re-incentivize it somehow. And that's, the first step with that is going to be the battery incentive bill. So that's my high level take on, net energy metering 3.0 and what it's going to do to the California market here. There's still going to be plenty of savings, a lot more savings than in other states, which is still great. And it's still going to be a great product, and they're going to have the full energy independence when they package a battery. And just look forward to those battery bills coming out and incentives so that we can provide that for homeowners and also commercial buildings.
That's cool. That's great. So it sounds like your company is prepared for this NEM 3.0, which is great, because it sounded to me like I can see that battle between the companies and the state and the mandates, and making it tougher and less attractive. So I have two final questions, if that's okay. The first is, what advice would you give to someone who's interested in pursuing a career in solar energy? And what skills and knowledge are necessary to succeed in the field? And I know you've touched on a lot of it.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, the first part of your question was advice.
So advice, someone's interested in, and they're like, yeah, I think I want to, be in the solar industry.
Sure.
somehow.
Yeah, I would definitely advise to do so, but I would say that you need to be in the right place of your life and you need to have some thick skin and you need to be highly motivated
Hmm.
because in most scenarios, it's a 1099 independent contractor job and you get out of it what you put into it. So I would highly recommend getting into it. It absolutely changed my life, but at the same time, I was in a spot in my life where I was I was ready to take something like that on. So it is a big move. It's a big transition. You need to be highly motivated. And you'll learn the skill sets along the way. I think the only thing you really need is just the motivation to succeed and just not giving up on it. And you just need to be ready to put in the time and the effort every single day and ready to outwork people because there is a lot of people that'll come into the industry. They're like, oh, I heard solar's great. You can make a lot of money, but they're kind of still dedicating time in different spots of their areas of their life, or they're going out, on weekends and going to the bars, and they're not being consistent because you really need the consistency when you're starting off in
Hmm.
the solar industry in particular, because you need to just be really sharp. You need to be growing every day. You need to create that momentum to actually get past the learning curve. And it's the same thing with a lot of sales, like maybe real estate as well. Like if you're just doing it part-time, you're not going to see large results by any means. And in a matter of fact, you probably won't make enough to survive, right? But if you stay with it and you stay consistent, I would highly recommend it. If you're somebody that's looking to level up in life, and you're really motivated and you're sharp and you just want to do something and get better at it and pursue it every day and give it your all, then get into solar. That's a no-brainer. Like get into
Hmm.
solar sales. I'm convinced it's probably the best sales industry you can just jump into, especially at a young age as well. So high-end real estate would be another one too as well, right? But it's very hard to make it in that. But besides that, like over mortgages, over a lot of other sales industries, especially mortgages right now, I mean, that's a no-brainer. A lot of people that do mortgages are coming to me to like supplement their income because they know, what people make in the solar industry. It's a high ticket sales position. So I mean, if you have it into, I would say get into solar sales if you're ready to take it on. If you're not, and you're all over the place and your mind isn't focused and dedicated, then
Hmm.
I wouldn't at that point, like I wouldn't recommend because I used to take in people like at first when I was recruiting people, I was like, yeah, come do it. Like you would almost take on anyone, and you end
Hmm.
up I would end up wasting my time if people aren't as like dedicated to it. The people that are dedicated, I've helped change their lives and have been successful. But as far as the skill set, and like you really like honestly not much. Like you just you'll learn it out there as long as you're okay. And it never gets easy, like knocking doors, like I mentioned earlier. That's never going to get easy. I hate to say it. You don't necessarily have to be a big people person, but you have to be willing to learn and be willing to learn how to deal with rejection. And honestly, when you get good at the doors, rejection isn't there as much if you're presenting yourself right. If you're a professional and people don't mind talking to you and you're very respectful, the conversation typically ends on a good note every single time, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But if you're not skilled at your craft and you kind of just you feel nervous, you look nervous, you can't answer questions or handle objections, then it's a whole nother story. So skill sets, you'll learn them along the way. You're going to need to learn how to overcome objections, just like, normal sales stuff. But this was my first job, and, any solar company, if they're decent, they're going to teach you how to overcome objections and a sales process and how to present yourself and all that. But the skills you kind of pick up along the way. Like I said, I had no previous sales experience, and I
Hmm.
just learned it all here in the solar industry. Completely different individual than before I got into the industry. So
That's pretty cool. How do you vet your recruits? So if you're out to recruit people, you obviously have to have an avatar. You have probably a couple of avatars, and so that you're not like welcoming everybody. Hey, sure, of course, anybody could do it. You can do it. Oh, you can't do it. Oh, well, now I just spent all this time trying to help you. Um, what's your formula? I guess. What do you look for?
for recruiting and hiring people.
Yeah, you probably have an SOP, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So my process is like nowadays, now that I've done both sides. I used to just recruit anybody. Now it's a more stringent and strict hiring process. And I target people and demographics that I feel would do well in the industry.
Such
And
as?
so there's two for me, right? I'll look for sales professionals, and I'm a little older than the actual like average age demographic of the normal solars rep. Believe it or not, a lot of them are in their mid 20s. So I like to grow people, with entrepreneurial spirits that are basically just getting out of college. A lot of kids that I see do well are ones with sport backgrounds because that they have that competitive nature. So that's one, and they're also well connected within their community and have a friend group. So I see large successful teams start there often, because I like to target A players, people that I can vibe with and have a good energy, positive, lots of energy to give. And because those are leaders that I feel are successful growing a solar team, and they grow, right? They may start off 22, 23 years old, and by their mid 20s, they're very successful. So I look for people that are sharp, people that are professional, people that are competitive and have an entrepreneurial spirit, and that just want to do well. And the other side to it, which is a side that a lot of people in their early 20s can't capitalize on, is I like to target other sales professionals that are older, right? People in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that have sales background, whether it's in mortgages, real estate, or other sales professional industries. That's a good demographic to target, given a lot of them don't want to knock doors. So to target those sort of people, you actually have to have a different opportunity available for them, which for me would be training them to just close and do presentations, which they can learn. And I don't like taking people that are part-time for a position like that, because if they're part-time, they won't be as sharp, believe it or not, as even a 25-year-old that are on the doors doing it every day. Because when they're on the doors and they're doing it that way and learning that way, you get really sharp really quick, and you can handle objections or concerns very quick, even faster than a sales professional that may have been really good in another industry. If they're just kind of in part-time, they're not even as sharp as like a younger solars rep. But so I target those two different demographics, and I have a more stringent criteria and sale or hiring process than I had starting off. That's for sure, because I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste someone else's time. So as long as we're all on the same page, I can make people very, very successful. And if they're not, maybe they're just a good fit for, somewhere else, and hopefully, they see how they can do. And then once they see my mindset and my way of approaching, they know I'm a serious individual that can actually make them a lot of money if they want to go all in with it. And they'll typically come back to me after they, get a little training and find out, hey, I want to go all in. That's when they'll come to me, when they're ready at that point.
Got it. So, final,
Yeah.
for any entrepreneur, we like to start with the end in mind, right? Begin with the end in mind, and the ultimate end is exit. So what's your exit strategy? What's your plan for the future? So that you can run off, ride off into the sunset of your music studio.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I feel like it may change throughout my journey of like, as I reach different steps in growing my business. But right now it's just growing a very large solar organization. I have another couple side companies I'm going to develop in that tie into the solar industry as well. And then, my overall end goal at this point is investing into certain real estate opportunities. That's just, and I'm learning, right? Like as you become an entrepreneur and you're building companies, it's also having you level up in skills and other investment opportunities. So as like I grow my business and I'm, meeting and networking with higher ed level people than I currently am now, it gets me to level up. And like I was at an event last weekend, and they gave me a huge investment opportunity, right? But to invest in these like real estate opportunities and stuff like that, you need the capital to do it. So right now I'm using solar as a vehicle for me to generate income, and then learning where to invest it is going to be the end game, so that you can have money, making money for yourself. And so my whole plan is to automate a business, and it won't completely be automated. I'll still be the CEO making all the high level decisions, but eventually, you got to start delegating things to different departments so that I'm not doing most of it. And I've already started doing that. And then it'll get to a place where my business is running. We have people coming in, training set in place. So it's very plug and play. And then at that point, I could start, developing my other companies. And from there, take the capital I make and then invest it into very smart strategic investment opportunities that is going to create me financial wealth. So
Mhm.
that's my exit. That's my game plan. I haven't been to the point where I've considered, oh, am I going to sell my company at one point? At which point would I sell? Or, have some sort of acquisition where I partner with somebody that's going to help my business that I've created take it to the next level. I've seen that happen multiple times. I've seen how it's done. I don't have any decisions like that to be made,
Mhm.
but I do just know, like, I'm growing my company to the moon. And with that, at the same time, I'm always leveling up as an entrepreneur and learning different skill sets from different mentors. And, I'm always investing back into myself. You learn when you're an entrepreneur that, and you're making money. Like, I paid thousands of dollars to go to this event over the weekend, but that got me in proximity with people of higher status than I am. So I can start thinking like they do and start learning, financial literacy and everything that
Mhm.
they know in business. Cause I still have a long way to go in business. If there's one thing I learned this last weekend, that's one of them. I mean, I see high level business entrepreneurs out there. It is no joke. I mean, they're making, they're worth over $100 million, right? So different levels, and just being in proximity with people like that and learning from them and investing on educating myself as well with how to invest and all these opportunities. That's just the
Mhm.
next level for me. And that's how I see myself building financial freedom and wealth, is just by continuing to educate myself and getting mentorship from high level people. And it kind of all starts with my vehicle now for making money, which is being a solar entrepreneur.
That's amazing. That's terrific. Yeah, you've hit on my particular area of passion, which is financial education. That's one of my companies. It actually deals with that. So I applaud you for that and the personal development. It's really remarkable to me across various industries where personal development winds up being initially it's like a oh wow fun thing, but it becomes really the foundational aspect of growth and expansion of your mindset, and that transition from the employee mindset to the abundance mindset. And I applaud you for that. That's fantastic. So this was really great. I wasn't entirely sure where it was going to go. I'm really happy we had this time together. And I think I've certainly gotten a lot out of it, and I'm pretty sure that uh, and everybody who's listening here is going to be pretty impressed and at the very least have greater knowledge base, but to understand more about the entrepreneurial process, what it took for you to go from just a kid wandering around in his 20s to a successful entrepreneur who's out there motivated to help people and help the world and help causes and grow and contribute more and more and more. So, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. And everybody out there, I hope you get a lot out of this as well.
I did. Thank you so much for the interview. I had an amazing time, and let's stay in touch. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Perfect. Perfect. And we are out. Maybe this works.
All right. Take care. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.